As the final days of this year quietly slip away, we find ourselves standing at a powerful moment in time. Behind us are months filled with memories, lessons, victories, and wounds. Ahead of us is a year not yet written, filled with unknowns we cannot predict or control. Most people rush through this moment, eager to leave the past behind or anxious about what the future may hold. But this pause matters. What we choose to carry forward and what we choose to release will shape the season ahead. This is not just the end of a year, it is an invitation to reflect, to surrender, and to realign our hearts. Tonight is about learning how to close this year the right way and how to step into the next one with faith rather than fear. As the year comes to a close, reflection becomes unavoidable. When we slow down long enough to look back, we begin to see how deeply God's faithfulness has been woven into every season of our lives. Gratitude does not come from pretending the year was easy or painless. It comes from recognizing that we were never abandoned in the midst of it. There were moments of joy that reminded us of God's goodness and moments of struggle that revealed His strength. Even in times when answers did not come quickly, God was still at work, shaping our character, deepening our dependence, and refining our faith. Gratitude grows when we acknowledge that every breath, every provision, every moment of protection was not accidental but intentional. We often overlook the quiet mercies, the problems God prevented, the doors He closed for our protection, the strength He provided when we had none left. Reflecting with gratitude allows us to see that God's presence was consistent even when our circumstances were not. It reminds us that survival itself is a testimony, and endurance is evidence of grace. Gratitude shifts our focus away from what went wrong and redirects it toward who remained faithful. It humbles the heart, softens the spirit, and opens our eyes to the truth that God carried us through storms we did not think we would survive. When we reflect with gratitude, bitterness loses its grip, comparison fades away, and peace begins to take root. Gratitude anchors the soul in truth rather than emotion and helps us remember that God's promises did not fail, even if the journey looked different than we expected. As we reflect, we are also invited to release. Every year leaves behind unfinished chapters, prayers that seemed unanswered, losses that still ache, disappointments that linger quietly in the heart. Carrying these burdens into a new season weighs down the spirit and clouds the ability to trust fully. Releasing them to God is not an act of weakness, but an act of faith. It means acknowledging that some questions may remain unanswered, and some wounds may still need healing, yet choosing to place them into God's hands rather than holding them tightly ourselves. Releasing does not mean forgetting. It means surrendering control. It means trusting that God understands what we cannot explain and sees purpose where we only see confusion. Many burdens persist because we revisit them repeatedly, replaying conversations, reliving regrets, and questioning decisions that cannot be undone. Releasing them to God breaks that cycle. It allows the heart to rest, knowing that God is capable of carrying what overwhelms us. When unanswered prayers are surrendered, hope is preserved. When disappointments are released, resentment begins to loosen its grip. Trust grows when we accept that God's timing and wisdom surpass our own understanding. Releasing burdens is a process, often repeated daily, sometimes moment by moment. It requires humility to admit that we cannot resolve everything on our own. Yet in that humility, freedom is found. God never asked us to carry the weight of yesterday into tomorrow. He invites us to lay it down, not because it does not matter, but because He cares deeply. Letting go creates space for healing, clarity, and renewed trust. It allows faith to breathe again and prepares the heart to move forward without the heaviness of what was never meant to be carried alone. Entering a new year often stirs a quiet uneasiness within the heart. The future feels uncertain because it has not yet been lived, and uncertainty can easily give birth to fear. Fear whispers questions about what might go wrong, what could be lost, and whether strength will be enough for what lies ahead. Yet stepping forward with trust instead of fear requires a conscious choice. Trust does not deny the reality of challenges. It acknowledges them while refusing to let them dominate the heart. Trust says that even if circumstances change, God remains constant. When fear is allowed to lead, it narrows vision and weakens resolve. It causes the heart to brace for impact rather than prepare for purpose. Trust, on the other hand, opens the spirit to possibility. It rests in the understanding that God already stands in the future, fully aware of what is coming and fully capable of guiding each step. Trust quiets anxious thoughts by reminding the soul that outcomes do not rest solely on human effort. It shifts focus from imagined disasters to divine assurance. Choosing trust means waking up each day with a willingness to move forward, even when clarity is limited. It means believing that provision will meet obedience and strength will meet surrender. Trust grows not by avoiding fear, but by confronting it with faith. Each step taken in trust weakens fear's voice and strengthens confidence in God's presence. The unknown becomes less intimidating when viewed through the lens of faith, and uncertainty transforms into an opportunity to rely more deeply on God rather than on personal control. Committing the future fully into God's hands is a deliberate act of surrender that challenges the instinct to control outcomes. Human nature seeks certainty, plans, and guarantees, yet the future rarely unfolds according to expectation. Surrender does not eliminate responsibility, but it redefines it. It means planning with wisdom while holding those plans loosely. It means acknowledging that God's purposes may differ from personal desires and trusting that His ways lead to greater good. When the future is entrusted to God, anxiety begins to loosen its grip because the burden of control is lifted. Worry often arises from trying to manage what cannot be predicted. Surrender replaces that strain with peace rooted in confidence that God is sovereign. To commit the future to God is to say that success is defined by faithfulness, not by outcomes. It requires humility to accept that detours may carry deeper purpose than straight paths. In God's hands, delays are not denials, and closed doors are not failures. Surrender creates alignment between the heart and God's will, allowing direction to become clearer over time. It also cultivates patience, as trust is strengthened through waiting. When the future is fully committed, fear of failure diminishes because identity is no longer tied to results. Obedience becomes the focus rather than achievement. Surrendered hearts are more receptive to guidance, correction, and growth. They recognize that God's plans unfold in seasons and that each season carries meaning. Placing the future in God's hands does not remove uncertainty, but it anchors the soul in peace. It frees the heart to move forward without carrying the weight of outcomes that only God can control as the year draws to its final moments. Reflection becomes a sacred responsibility. Looking back with gratitude allows us to see God's hand in places we once overlooked. It reminds us that faith was sustained, strength was provided, and mercy was present even when life felt uncertain. Gratitude reshapes memory, turning survival into testimony and endurance into evidence of grace. At the same time, reflection reveals the weight we may still be carrying, unanswered prayers, disappointments, fears, and regrets that quietly linger. Releasing these burdens into God's hands is not denial, it is trust. It acknowledges that some chapters close without explanation, yet remain safely held by a faithful God. As we prepare to move forward, fear naturally tries to follow us into the future, whispering doubts about what lies ahead. Choosing trust over fear does not require certainty, only faith. Trust anchors the heart in the truth that God is already present in tomorrow. Finally, Committing the future fully to God shifts the focus from control to surrender, from anxiety to peace, from outcomes to obedience. When the year is closed with gratitude and the next is opened with God, the heart is no longer divided between past regret and future worry. It becomes steady, hopeful, and prepared for whatever comes next.